I realize that it's likely many people with more knowledge and more experience paying close attention to the gaming industry will have a more informed and nuanced perspective about this, but I still want to share mine. I think there's value in it, and I hope most of those listening can find it insightful, cathartic, or at least interesting. I think there's been a change in the nature of how some video games are presented and made if you compare the past decade to the majority of this one. It's only smart to present some of your game's content before releasing it. You gotta show the players what it is they're getting into, what it brings to the table, for them to see if the game is up their alley and hopefully be convinced that it's worth their time and money. But that's a very sterile way to describe it. Trailers and press conferences work to build excitement for the games. It's not like marketing for kitchen appliances. There's a lot of emotion behind being in the gaming world. They are, after all, emotional forms of media, and they go even beyond series and movies, for their potential to make you feel things is not just through storytelling, but through the interactivity of gameplay. Things like the peace and exploration, the satisfaction of success, or just the joy of playing with friends. Game developers with their presentations kind of feed off those feelings and sell the idea that this game will be able to provide that, but in newer, fresher, and better ways. You want people to be telling their friends how amazing it looks. You want them to build communities online discussing and speculating about what's been shown. You want people waiting for midnight to hit so they can begin the download. And that's all well and good, except when it isn't. Except when the developers know that the game won't be what they're selling it to be, or at least know that it's far from it, and it's unsure whether they'll ever get to it. Often it happens that a team presents an awesome trailer showing the idea of their game, but then things go wrong in the development process and people start realizing that the idea was too ambitious. So instead of delaying the game, or at least adjusting the marketing, they show altered, flashy gameplay that is not at all an accurate representation of the overall playing experience. They have a clear incentive to do so, of course. If you get a good hype train going for your game, as long as you don't give out too much more info, don't give out review copies or give them to certain reviewers with pre-orders and midnight releases and day one DLC, you'll have a good opening week regardless of the quality of the game, and a sizable bulk of a game's sales come in set time. There's a lot of money making potential purely from proper marketing, and in a lot of cases it's based on deceit. Deceit works well on the gaming audience, and I think it's because of what I said before, the emotional connection we have with video games. We've been conditioned for the most part with amazing experiences and creative worlds to interact with, so when we're presented the idea of a new one, our brain quickly goes to what it could be. So we get excited for it, buy it as soon as possible, and realize we've been duped. We see why nothing was shown in detail, because there wasn't anything to show. To use concrete examples, I'm talking about games like Destiny, 2015 Battlefront, No Man's Sky, Watch Dogs, The Division, and others. Though the quality of said games vary in the public eye, from decent to average to just shitty, they can all be categorized with one word: disappointing. Companies behind these games straight up lied about the content, or willingly presented some things and hid others so as to morph the perception of it and trick the public into thinking it's a much better and deeper game than it really was. There were games that, though definitely not awful and with a lot of production value behind them, ended up lacking in content, shallow in its options to interact with the world, and with generic, uninventive gameplay elements. Many describe them along the lines of $1 million packaging on a $10 present. I'd like to think that no game was ever planned out to be mediocre. It's just overly ambitious ideas, mistakes along the way that become irreversible, and an ever closer, unchangeable deadline. But you really never know what happens behind the scenes. Could be some games were made with the mindset of the less time and money we put in, the more profit we get out. Regardless, in both scenarios, once the flaws of a game become definitive, many game companies seem to avoid any path that could result in a better experience for us, the consumers. Were they to delay the game, it could end up being what it was promised. But these big companies have cycles that are planned years past. They need to please investors. The longer the game's in development, the more money they put in, and the longer they're in a financial hole without seeing any return. Because they really can't handle that, I'm sure. I see a lot of people online get upset whenever they see any game with season passes or early pre-orders, but these are really not the problem. There's nothing inherently wrong with selling something before it's ready for purchase, and we've seen it done innocuously many times. They're just safety nets, but they can be used wrongly when greed is in play, like false promises about what you're selling, or cutting content from your game to put it into later paid DLC, low-key doubling the price of everything by selling something incomplete at $60. Tactics like this have resulted in publishing companies that know they don't need to make great games to make money. Again, maybe their intention has never been that, but maybe in the future it will be, because they've seen cases where it's worked. So why wouldn't they try to save even more money by cutting costs and streamlining the design process? They know they don't have to try and push the envelope. They don't have to come up with new creative ideas and concepts in game game design. They don't have to be inventive. They just have to make something functional and have it look pretty. With that, they can throw out some flashy gameplay trailer, not show much, spend a lot of money on ads, and the game will sell itself. I suppose this happens to every industry once it gets big enough. People start thinking how they can make a lot of money out of it without considering the artistic integrity of the medium. But it's different for other things. You watch an alright action movie, you think, well, not the best, but you only spent 2 hours and $10, no big deal. You watch an alright pilot for 40 minutes, you choose whether or not to keep watching. But you buy an alright game, and you just spent $60 on something that's not worth the 20 or more hours you're meant to put into it. It would be a waste of time if you play it completely, and it's a waste of money regardless. If it's a genuine attempt and failure of a game studio, fine, but to have these soulless corporate endeavors become a staple of the industry is just not sustainable. And of course, for the most part, blame lies in the big publishing companies. These are the ones who handle the money and make a lot of the executive decisions that fuck over the subordinate game studios. Look at Battlefront 2. DICE puts effort in making a fun Star Wars shooter, adding a campaign trying to make up for the first one, and EA decides to force in purchasable loot boxes as the main way to progress online. Fucking brilliant. And that brings me to another major issue plaguing the industry. Microtransactions. Now, I'm not that big of an idealist. I know that it's a way for companies to get extra money from the big spenders, make profits limitless, which keeps the game at $60 for everyone, because games are getting increasingly more expensive to make. Add your microtransactions, sure, but don't make their presence hinder in the slightest the experience of the person who already paid full price for a full game. They should be completely optional. The consumer spends more money on the game if they want to, not one player should ever feel like they have to. I personally consider no content should be locked behind extra money, even cosmetic things. I feel like if I pay full price for a game, I should get all the content in the game. I say if a cosmetic item can be bought or can come out in a payable loot box, let me at least get it through grinding. That's a fair compromise, I think, because players can see that as an accomplishment to look forward to as they play, but impatient players can have the option to just get it right away, thus making the studio more money and everyone is happy. Having some cosmetics purchasable only through microtransactions isn't that bad. I mean, it doesn't bust my balls as much as some people, but for fuck's sake, don't charge for gameplay changing content, even if it can be achieved through grinding. Firstly, those systems tend to be way exploitative like Battlefront 2. It wasn't just the presence of loot boxes, it was that to unlock the best heroes without buying them, you needed like a million hours of gameplay, basically forcing you to pay extra. But even if they had a less exploitative system, it's still wrong on principle. It can work with cosmetics, but not with gameplay, because everyone wants the best guns right away. Everyone wants to play with Darth Vader right away. They're the cooler things of your game, and often optimal ways to play if you want to win. They're not irrelevant things like some skins. They're essential parts of the actual gameplay everyone should and wants to experience. And what you've done is put a time wall in front of these cool things that you can get over with money. Similar to time walls in free-to-play mobile games, you've restricted from the players the coolest content of the game, giving it up to those who paid extra. You simply cannot have microtransactions with gameplay elements. It's always scummy. And there's really no possible excuse for this, like there could be for selling underwhelming games. This is just pure greed. Overall, it's the business-mindedness of the current industry that's the problem. Though some aspects of a game can be artistic marvels to behold, the game design tends to be what suffers most of all, because that's not what sells a game before it comes out. Hype is. The focus on sales and marketing and deadlines and greedy companies breathing down your neck, it just seems to snuff out any sort of passion and unique vision developers could have had in the game design, and what we're left with is, well, what's left. Now, I've explained the problems and I've explained the reasons, at least my own opinion of them, but my purpose in this video isn't exactly that. I really just want to vent more than anything, and that was my justification for it. I am tired of the trajectory many AAA game studios are taking. I'm tired of being disappointed, which could sound entitled, but I'd say it's fair given it's because I'm often lied to. And it's angering to be deceived, yes, but worse than that for me is seeing what a game is supposed to have, what it's portrayed to be, imagining its potential for an amazing, unique new experience, and getting nothing close to that. That's the most painful thing, knowing what all these games could have been given the basically infinite resources available to them, knowing I'll never get to play those games. Anthem is gonna come out fairly soon, and my thoughts on it encapsulate the situation pretty well. It's such a cool concept and I really wish it success so I can play it and enjoy it. It's a semi-open world type game with a BioWare caliber story and fucking Iron Man suits. How do you fuck that up, right? Pretty much by not trying. The game might not be perfect, but if they only tried to build on the potential of such a world, if they only made sure to put talented people and give them the time and resources to work on the gameplay, the game could be so good. Let me be a bit more concrete, I suppose. Your javelins could have great progression systems, having you start with simple automatic weapons and then you level, unlocking new abilities that help you for different types of situations, that work better for different types of enemies, or also that work well with each other to create some sort of offensive combos. There could be AoE abilities, damage boosts, crowd control, and movement options. These abilities themselves could progress, getting more range and different effects, and it could all work based off a skill tree system, giving the player's choice. It needs to be dynamic. The progression can't simply be, oh, now you give more damage and you have more health so you can fight enemies of a higher level the exact same way. Related to that, you want diverse enemies with different mechanics that force you to try and use these abilities in creative ways, instead of just endlessly shooting at bullet sponges. Of course, your different javelins will have different abilities that work better for different situations, and in very complex boss fights, they should tailor it so it'd be better to have one of each. A simple example, a boss could have a phase where they could have ads running towards him, and if they reach him, he'll regain health. So a Colossus would be more useful to do their better AoE damage. Meanwhile, the boss is swinging around the air faster than a standard enemy, so a storm would be better, assuming it has better movement options. I know this is a small example, but it's about as deep as I can go right now. Have many different environments, have an emotionally compelling story, have rewarding progression, not one based on grind and RNG, and this game is a dream come true. But I guess I'm aiming way too high with that. On top of the previous disappointments of these online games, there are a lot of reasons to be skeptical. Sources say BioWare's fate as a company seems to be dependent on this game's success. Also, a lot of old team-leading designers are leaving. But at least they said this.
So no loot boxes, no ability to pay for power.
Even if it's true though, can this game reach what it has the potential to? Can it get close? I don't know. All I know is I'm tired of seeing these amazing ideas crumble into shells of what they could have been, which is why I end this video with a plea to anyone watching. I know I'm not the first person to say this, so it might be getting old at this point, but we gotta speak with our wallets. The only reason companies continue to do this, continue to deceit and put minimal care in making good games, it's because they continue to get away with it scot-free, or even worse, with a hefty profit. What we need to do as consumers is show them consistently that trying to trick us or deceive us or exploit us is not an option, and they will suffer monetary consequences if they do. So when they think about publishing an average, underwhelming game filled with broken promises, a game purposefully lacking in content, or a game riddled with nefarious loot boxes, they can be like, oh shit, no, we're gonna lose a lot of money because people aren't just buying it without thinking. Let's instead not do that and try to make a good game, like others have very successfully done. In the end, people need to get smart, because companies won't get altruistic. Their main focus is their bottom line. We have to stop pre-ordering games and buying at release and buying season passes. There are specific situations, sure. Like for example, I'd pre-order Last of Us 2. Even if it ends up being the shittiest thing by most people's standards, I need to judge it for myself. I need to see how the story ends. That's usually the case with sequels, but that's really never the case with new IPs or sequels of bad games. So stop giving studios unearned safety nets, allowing them to ship whatever and still make money. When you look at many people's reactions to Anthem, it's clear there's been a spike in the general awareness of these issues. It's all very known. Most YouTube comments and videos seem to show a healthy amount of skepticism, given the history of the genre and the company behind it. But the problem that's been the same for a while is, how much does that translate to game sales? Often it doesn't. People talk a lot of shit about it but still buy it. One can only hope that with this current growth of dissent, the tides have started to turn. There are reasons to be optimistic. People seem to have spoken with their wallet for Battlefront 2, which makes sense as to why EA and others keep using no loot boxes as some sort of advertisement. I hope this trend continues and more people begin to get smarter with this, so these types of practices get slowly withered out into obscurity, where people stop bothering to heavily follow sequels of bad games and definitely do not buy anything until trusted reviews come in. If the studio/company turns things around and you have a valid reason to be excited, then awesome, but I'd say never pre-order or buy at release for new IPs. Never give them back the ability to make money on lies, so their focus can shift on making good games, on delivering on what they've promised. I don't want to make it seem like it's all bad in the gaming world though. There are many studios who implement season passes and loot boxes pretty innocuously, and those who consistently deliver on the content their trailers show. Studios that are worth trusting because they make great games, and they need to be constantly congratulated because things would look pretty grim without them. Luckily, people are speaking with their wallet there. Even at the height of my cynicism, I'm still hopeful for Anthem. I think BioWare can still tell a good story, and by what they've described, it seems that will be intact. When it comes to the gameplay, I hope this game is the first step on the road to improvement for the industry, because I want to play the games they keep showing us, not the ones we're getting. I want to play the Anthem I described earlier. I want to play the Anthem it could be. And I get that they might not reach that, but I want them to at least try.